Okay, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We are now live on YouTube. This is the licensing subcommittee, which is looking at the application for a premises license for Gigi's Food Limited. The first order of business is to appoint the chair. Would one of the councillors please nominate, and then another second, a chair for the meeting, please?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Stephen Allen British Survey.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Councillor Alan Britis.
Thank you to my councillor colleagues, Councillor Draper and Councillor Howard, who are here on this panel. Thanking them for nominating me to chair this meeting, and thank Richard and everyone for being here. Welcome everyone to the meeting. As I said, I'm Councillor Stephen Allen British, chairing this subcommittee of the Licensing Committee. The two other members are Councillor Janice Howard, Councillor Nick Draper. Introductions will follow as people are asked to speak, so introduce yourselves, say who you are. The hearing is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel, so you need to be aware that meetings held virtually may have a slight delay. Participants will be muted unless they're asked to speak, and this is to reduce background noise. Now, if anyone is experiencing any technical difficulties, they should let the clerk know, that's Richard. In the event that there is a hearing loss and someone is no longer present in the meeting, we'll adjourn the meeting and sort out the technicalities whilst we resolve the issues. In the event that the issue cannot be resolved, the meeting will be rescheduled for another date as soon as it's practicable. This is so that everyone here has their say, is listened to as we go through this meeting. Now then, for my councillor colleagues, are there any declarations of interest and apologies for absence? I see no apologies for absence. We are all here as councillors. Any declarations of interest? None there being, we can proceed. I'd like to inform everyone that the subcommittee will follow the hearing procedures, a copy of which was included in the notice pack sent to all parties. If anyone's not received this notice pack, please speak now. Thank you. Can I ask our legal advisor, Guy Bishop, who's present at the subcommittee, just to talk us through a pre-hearing we had and confirm the procedures for clarification on any aspect of the application. Over to you, Guy.
Yes, the licensing committee always meets beforehand just to read through the papers and get any reminders that of issues that they need to think about. No legal advice is provided in a pre-meet, and any legal advice, if given during deliberations, will be recorded within the decision notice. Thanks.
Thank you. We're joined by Elizabeth Mcdonald, who's our licensing officer, I understand. Are there any technical issues that should be brought to the panel's attention, Elizabeth?
I don't believe so, just that we have received evidence from the applicant that the application was advertised as per the regulations. We're not aware of any further communication between the parties other than that is actually already within the report papers.
Thank you very much. Now, as I explained at the outset, the hearing and the order of speakers will be following the procedures included in your agenda pack. So we'll start with the presentation by the applicant. So over to the applicant. If you're muted.
Sorry.
Thank you, Naomi.
Zoom call.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time today in advance, and obviously good afternoon. My name is Naomi Milinga, and I represent Gigi's Food Limited, currently trading as Gigi's Organic in Wimbledon Village. And I submitted an alcohol license application, I think it was 2 months ago, to supply alcohol for sale and consumption on the premises. Just to give you a background on the business, I originally set up this company in the memory of my mother who passed away. She had colon cancer, and I was very obviously upset by the whole thing. And I think this is, you could potentially say, my way of dealing with my trauma and just trying to keep her memory alive in this way, if you like. And so this business has gone through quite a bit of transformation over the past 2 years. When the pandemic started, well, originally this business was never going to be what it is today. It was just going to be selling crepes. But then the pandemic hit, and then I changed it into a delivery business, supplying fruit and vegetables to people who were stuck at home at the time, which was going well for a while. But then when the first lockdown was lifted, people went back to buying products as they normally would to the supermarket, and there was no pressure in terms of the supply chain. So by that time, people approached me and they said, wouldn't you sell other items in your fruit and vegetable boxes? For example, kimchi and various things. So the business has then become more like an online store where you could buy health products. And again, that was still in line with what I actually wanted to do, to honor my mother's memory, because when you go through chemotherapy, your immune system is severely affected, and so I was stocking products that would help you when you go through chemotherapy. Anyhow, the online business was experiencing problems because our own Google account was restricted by Google. It didn't recognize that we were a legitimate business when we actually were. So I opened the shop in Wimbledon Village, just again to keep the place alive. And people were buying things at the time, but they started asking for things which we didn't have. They wanted coffees and cakes and food and various things. So again, I changed it into what they wanted. And so it is what you can see now if you walk past, based on customers' requirements and what they are looking for. So, I'm sure you hear this all the time because you work for the council. But the UK government has made it virtually impossible to make a business profitable during lockdowns, unless you do something purely online based. But even now, even that has its challenges. So we have been in the situation since all these various lockdowns that the business, again, is finding it difficult to turn a profit. So there's only so much margin is on coffees and cakes and the rest of it. So then I applied for the alcohol license, hoping that that will again transform the business and will make it survive, if you like. So the two ladies from the residents associations contacted me, and we arranged a meeting where they asked me what my plans were. Now, my plans are not to run a nightclub or to run a wine bar. And I think, well, if you read obviously the representations, they often refer to that. This business, is not backed by venture capitalists. I don't have any business partners. This is not a chain. This is completely independent. And just going back to having no business partners either, this is not something I aspire to have either, because I don't know, it comes with its own challenges, if you like. So basically, I'm the only one trying to make this work. And I just wanted to give you an overview in terms of where I'm actually coming from. So just going back to, obviously, the representations. Just give me a second, sorry. So when the ladies came to the shop, we sat down and we had a chat. And I think it lasted for about 2 hours. And so basically, they suggested that I restrict my own license application, which I put through just a general open application without any sort of restrictions in the beginning. So I told them I won't do that because I don't want to incur any more fees in terms of having to vary my own license, then having to re-advertise and cause more delays and time and all the rest of it. So that's the reason I didn't, despite our meeting, vary my own license application. Again, just to give you some feedback or like a background in terms of what's actually happening at the shop. So these conditions and their representation refers to a chef and obviously supplying food. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but since Brexit, employing retail staff and people who work in hospitality has been increasingly difficult because a lot of people who worked in the industry are no longer living here. They moved back to various countries that they came from. So it's a lot harder to find a chef nowadays. It's even harder to find a barista who can make your coffee. And generally people don't really want to work in a coffee shop or in a restaurant, because everybody, even if you come into Gigi's, all the girls there are studying. One of them wants to be, I don't know, a singer, the other one wants to be a dancer. They are all working towards their degrees.
Oh, Naomi. No, Naomi, Stephen here, you're just cutting up a bit.
Yeah, oh, you couldn't hear me, no?
Yeah. Naomi, yes. You're just cutting up a bit. We're looking at, we just, if you want to wrap up, we're looking at licensing issues.
Yeah,
we've got your presentation. We've got the presentation, so we need to move to the objectives so they can ask you questions and the subcommittee can ask you questions as well. If you want to wrap up.
Yeah, okay. So basically, well, thank you for helping me with that. I mean, all I want to do is just for you to understand a bit more about this business as opposed to just what's written on paper, because what's written on paper doesn't actually reflect, completely what the reality is. And you don't have anything in writing from me when it comes to that. So, for me to employ a chef full time, that means I have to cover his salary, even if we don't make that. So restricting this application to say you can only sell alcohol if somebody is sitting down with a substantial meal, that means I have to find a person's salary or potentially 2 chefs' salary. Currently, we don't have a chef because, these people come and go. So if I don't have a chef, that means I won't be able to sell anything pretty much, if I keep to these restrictions. Again, we talked about the number of people in the premises. I think obviously restricting the number to 30 is again quite low. Although it's a small shop or it's a small premise, we need to try and make as much money as we possibly can to pay the rent and the rates and the bills and people's salaries and the rest of it. So, if we have an event, restricting it to 30 people is very low. In terms of not being able to use the outside tables again, that's almost like, all these restrictions are very similar to what you would see during a lockdown. You're having to sit down with a meal. If you go into a restaurant or anywhere you can order a drink now, nobody's asking you to order food when you sit down with a drink. Again, I'm not saying I want to run a wine bar, but I just think it's way too onerous having to ask people to order a meal every time they sit down. Yeah, so the outside space, yeah, we do have outside space, and I very much would like to utilize that because, people come with dogs, and they don't always come into the place. And, summer is coming and the rest of it. And I all I'm trying to do is, not to having to close this shop down. And I just feel like, all of,
Thank you, Naomi. I think we have your
1 point, sorry.
Thank you. I think you've explained it. Do you want one more point before we go? Because there'll be questions to you, and then you can defend yourself there again.
Okay. When it comes to no deliveries or refused collection, I mean, I know Veolia collect the rubbish before 8 a.m. So again, that's not something we can guarantee. When the people come to collect the rubbish, they come when they get there, type of thing. So again, restricting that, I don't know if I can keep to that.
Okay, we'll have a look at that for you as well.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. We now stick to our hearing procedures. And I know the police have put in conditions that have been accepted by you. Are the police here to ask questions of the applicant? No, thank you. We now go to interested parties to the applicant, and that includes the two organisations. We've got your presentations. Is it Sue? Hello, Sue. Do you want to ask any questions of the applicant?
Well, if I may, Naomi is saying now that she wants to be able to serve alcohol at tables outside the premises. When we made our representations, we were under the impression that the premises for the purposes of the application would include the outside space. But we now, when we got the notice pack, we saw that the premises for the purposes of the license do not include the outside space. So as applied for, there would be no, if the license is granted, there would be no permission to sell alcohol to people sitting at tables anyway.
That's not right.
I'm sorry, have I misunderstood that?
You have, yes. They've done on and off as part of their alcohol request. So effectively, the off sales would be consumed outside. Consumption is not a licensable activity, as they always say. So therefore, they would take their drinks and sit outside with them. They're allowed to do that.
Okay, in that case,
I should say that's provided there's a table and chair license or a pavement license outside, or it's their own property, in which case that's fine.
In that case, we have included a condition, a suggested condition, that alcohol shouldn't be consumed outside on the premises, because most of the other restaurants in the village who have got outside tables do not have permission to sell alcohol at those tables for it to be consumed on the street effectively, and we don't think that that should be introduced in this particular case. What is surprising to us is the point about chef, because you're advertising your premises online as a venue for brunches, which implies that food will be provided. So are you actually asking the panel to grant a license to people who just want to come and sit inside or outside and have a drink and not eat anything at all? Is that what you're asking for? Because that wasn't what we discussed.
Yes, Sue, but since then I lost the chef, you know what I mean? And finding—
So you don't have a chef?
I don't have a chef now. So the food is prepared by the girls that are there. And, sometimes they have to run the coffee machine and, various things in the same time. So, for me to employ a chef or two full time, I have to find his salary. You know what I mean? I don't have a chef at the moment because he left and I don't know where he is. And, finding another one, I don't even know how, you're going to have to advertise for that again. But again, they're asking for atrocious money. And there's a shortage of chefs and baristas and people who work in places like this.
Thank you very much. Back to Sue. Any more questions?
No, I think you've clarified.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Naomi, for engaging with each other, both before and during this meeting. I now turn to the councillors. Any questions of the applicant from Councillor Draper or Councillor Howard?
No question, but for me.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Draper. I think there's a question from Councillor Howard.
Yes, I was just interested in the application hours running till 11 p.m. Do you envisage opening at 11 p.m. Like Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, I think, as in the application?
No, I mean, when I put the application in, I just put in what I thought was the broadest, but the reality is, if you go up to the village Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, even on the weekends, if you go up there even like this evening, the place will be dead. There's only, as the ladies as well said in their objections, this is a weekend destination, and that's probably my fault. I didn't actually realize that at the time when I opened the shop there. We are having trouble making ends meet because the place is dead during the week. The only traffic we get is the weekends. So no, the answer is no. I don't envisage to be open until 11 p.m. on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and not even on the weekend. To be honest, this is not. I don't plan to run a wine bar, as I said, or a nightclub or anything like that that's open late. And this is not a pub. This is not where people come to party. It's not set up like that, and that's not my aspiration. People go down to near the station if they want to go and have whatever, or they go to the city. Young people don't come to my shop to party.
Thank you. Hopefully you'll be busy during Wimbledon fortnight till 11 p.m, Naomi. So I wouldn't give up hope there. As you said, you've put in the optimum hours to enable you to survive. That's what we're looking at the moment. Okay.
It would surprise you because even last year Wimbledon was dead. I know it was different, but again,
yeah. All right. Well, it's not licensing objective to make sure that Wimbledon thrives. All right. Now we will have the presentation by the interested parties who will take in during the agenda order. So do the interested parties want to make a presentation now?
Yes, thank you. We've agreed that I would just read out a short position on behalf of both of us. Both the Parkside Residents Association and the Belvedere Estate Residents Association have membership areas which adjoin the village, and we've described our areas in our representations. We are both, as associations, very keen, and our residents are keen to support village businesses. And post-pandemic, we are very pleased to see that occupancy levels in the village are as high as they are. The shops are opening up, and it's great, and the village is very busy, particularly at weekends. I'm sorry to hear Naomi's description of the difficulty she's having. We also recognise that for the purposes of licensing, there is no longer a special policy in the village, which there used to be. And I know this was a contentious issue when the licensing policy was reissued last year. We do not object to the principle of what was a shop having a license to sell alcohol. However, any application for a license has got to show that what is being proposed will promote the licensing objectives. We asked Naomi to meet with us on the 14th of February so we could understand what the business was that she is operating and that she would want the license for. And whilst we completely understand that she's adapted to meet circumstances in which she's found herself and trading challenges, it is a bit of an evolving situation. But what was described to us and what is happening on the premises when you go past is that there are children and families on the premises, and she did envisage that alcohol would be sold with food. She didn't envisage opening beyond 9:30 at night, which is what she's just confirmed to Councillor Howard. The concern we have, quite simply, is that this application invites the subcommittee to determine a licence in a vacuum, to allow a permission to sell alcohol in any circumstances for any particular business that the applicant decides might make money, might make ends meet, might be appropriate. The whole point about about a hearing and an application is that you have to look at what the business is and how the licence would operate in relation to that business. You graft it onto the business and you make it work. But if you're being asked to grant a licence for something that might happen, might not, who knows, it's very difficult for you to ensure that proper conditions are introduced. We're pleased to see that Trading Standards stepped in and required a condition that any children on the premises would have to be supervised by a responsible adult, because that was something.
I think that was offered, actually.
Well, sorry, when we made our representations, all we had seen is the operating schedule, which didn't.
Yeah, it was in the operating schedule.
What we got was, I can show you the copy. What we were sent was simply, how will the licensing objectives be promoted? It wasn't in the papers that were sent to us before we made our representations. What you publish is the licensing team's summary of the.
You know, it was in.
Anyway,
it doesn't
matter.
It's okay. I just thought
It
was in box K.
Yes, we didn't get box K sent to us.
But that was on the application. You would have got that.
We didn't get the whole application. All we got was one sheet from it. So, but let's not worry about that. I'm just explaining why we made representations about something that was already in the application, which we didn't see until the full application was sent to us.
So that you got the papers after the end of the consultation period. Yeah.
Quite a while ago.
Yeah. So
okay,
I mean,
and you only got one page, not the whole.
Yes, exactly. I don't want you to think that we wasted your time
not at all.
Making representations about things that were already covered. So that's simply the point.
Okay.
I was just concerned that you might not have got the papers, which is always what we want to do as a council.
Yeah, I think what needs to happen, if I may say so, is that when an application goes in and if someone wants a copy of it, it should be sent in full on a redacted basis with the personal details sent back. That doesn't happen at the moment.
I think it would be available on the website, because we have to put it on the website. But anyway,
not the full application, not the full text of the application.
We would make it available if it was requested. I don't remember it being requested, but we would normally make it available.
Okay. Anyway, but
we digress.
I think. Sorry, we're digressing. As I say, our concern simply is that there is insufficient information available for the license to understand the nature of the business to which this license will apply. As drafted, the application is seeking permission to serve alcohol to anybody in any circumstances until 11 o'clock at night for 6 nights a week. And they don't have to have a meal. The applicant is saying she's got a problem giving them any food at all. And in my book, that is equivalent potentially to a wine bar use. Now, it may be that that's not what the applicant wants to do. It certainly doesn't, there isn't any planning permission to operate the premises as a wine bar at the moment. But once a license is granted, it endures for the premises. And so the applicant may give up and decide, okay, I'm walking away, I'm going to do something else. But a successor can take over those premises with an unrestricted license to sell alcohol on any terms until 11 o'clock at night. The committee's job is to look at the license that's been applied for and to ensure that sale of alcohol is conducted in a manner which will promote the licensing objectives. And if you haven't got information about what will happen and what kind of business it's going to be, I don't think you can do that properly. So all we've done is to suggest terms that we think would be reasonable for the license to be operated, that reflect what the applicant said she wanted to do. So if those terms were offered, then our representations would withdraw them because we're here. But that would resolve the matter. We would like to try and compromise this if we can, because we don't oppose the principle of a license on the premises. It's just the terms as to when alcohol can be sold.
Thank you very much, Sue, and thank you for your representations on behalf of your residents, and I appreciate the relationship you have in representing residents in the village. We now go over to Naomi to see if she wants to ask any questions of the interested parties. Naomi, it's entirely up to you. Over to you if you have any questions of Sue.
I don't want to ask any questions. You know, we had a chat for 2 hours, and I appreciate you coming.
Okay. Thank you. It's only for questions. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Sorry.
Okay,
no.
Thank you, Naomi. This aspect is a question. Sorry to cut you up. You'll have a chance to come back later. Any questions of the interested parties from Councillors Howard and/or Draper? No?
Only one, yes, Chair, that's all right. I mean, what exactly are your objections? I haven't actually heard, I've heard an awful lot about process. I've heard an awful lot about the possibility of an unseen nature. Have you any practical objections to Gigi's operating a license?
Not if Gigi's is operating on the basis of any other premises that's serving food and wants to serve alcohol with them. What we are concerned about is the idea that the premises could be open for alcohol to be served without food. Because if you sell on that basis, the premises have a wine bar use. And we don't think that that is something without conditions about noise and numbers of people. The premises are small. The numbers of people coming in, people who live near wine bars complain about the noise of bottles being shoved into refuse containers and the disturbance that they get from that. Haygarth Place is directly behind the premises, which is within the BERA membership area. Residents are likely to suffer disturbance, noise and nuisance potentially from a wine bar, more so than a restaurant.
Chair, if I may, so if Gigi's is selling food, you don't then object to the sound of wine bottles being thrown into bins?
Fair comment. Well, the ivy was made to accept a condition that required bottle collection to be managed in order to mitigate the impact on residents. I think we've asked for this. We've asked for a condition about noise if about collections if it is a restaurant, because the noise is greater if it's a wine bar because there are more bottles consumed. But we have asked for a condition about refuse anyway.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Draper. Thank you, Sue, for answering Councillor Draper's questions. We now can move on from interested parties, from applicants and questions to and from, to asking the licensing officer for any comments or clarification. Elizabeth, over to you.
I don't think there's anything for me to add unless you've got any queries. I don't think there's anything for me to add.
Okay, thank you. Over to the legal advisor for any comments or clarifications. Guy.
Oh, sorry. Just making sure I'm not muted. I am not. That's good. Okay. Where do I start? Okay. So one of the things that I saw that was a proposed condition related to the capacity inside. I think it was limiting it to 30. The capacities of premises are dealt with by the fire authority, and it's under the fire regulations, which date I can't quite remember. I think it was around 2005 or thereabouts, maybe before. And that's dealt with through risk assessment and is dealt with direct by the fire authority and is outside licensing as such. So we don't normally have the licensing authority limiting numbers in the premises, and certainly not without evidence to support it. So that's the first thing to mention. Second thing is, I noticed in the representations there was great reliance on the licensing policy, which is good to see. But I do have to remind the committee that the committee has regard to the licensing policy. It doesn't have to follow it to the letter. I think that's the way of putting it. The same goes for the guidance. And of course, it's the promotion of the licensing objectives that the committee is, meant to be looking at and promoting. It is obviously trying to make a decision that's both appropriate and proportionate at the same time, and have a fair hearing in the process. So I remind the committee of its determination process in that sense, and obviously you're weighing up and balancing the interests of the parties involved. And so therefore it comes down to also a little bit of advice. Again, I'm sure the resident associations are well aware of this, that the committee, when considering things, have to consider the evidence before it, as well as the risks that they can see might happen. But generally, it's mainly the evidence that before them. So that's all I need to tell you at this stage, and I don't doubt you may need my advice in deliberations in due course.
Thank you very much. We now move to closing statements, and first I turn to Sue Cook as the interested party for any closing statements. Sue. Thank you. No closing statement from Sue, interested parties. And now any closing statement from you, Naomi.
Yes, well, I would like to thank everyone's time today. And, I just want to say I can't take responsibility for, whoever else comes after me taking the space. Whatever else they have intentions to using that if I ever leave. But, all I can say is, while I'm in the premises, I will operate it in a reasonable and sensible and responsible manner. My intentions, again, are not to run a wine bar or a nightclub or anything similar to that. And all I'm asking this committee respectfully is to not impose restrictions similar to lockdown measures, which, these representations are very similar to that. All I'm asking is that we have the same benefits as other businesses have in the area, and we can be on the level playing field in a very competitive marketplace. That's all I have to say, really.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're coming to the conclusion of this licensing subcommittee. The subcommittee will now retire to a closed session, and I'll invite our legal advisor and our clerk to join us to provide us with any advice we may need. Once I've closed the hearing, our clerk will disconnect you, sadly, from the meeting room. I want to inform all those present that you will all receive a written copy of the decision notice within 5 working days. Thank you all very much. I therefore now close the hearing, and thank you all for your attendance. Richard, over to you to close the hearing, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you all. That is the end of the hearing. Thank you.
Oh,
sorry, could I just make one closing statement? We have one question. What we wanted to try and do was make sure that actually that this was in line with other premises that have recently been given licenses in the village, like Colette, which closes at, is it 9 or 10? Valabona, the same, which also closed. None of these have been given licenses until 11 o'clock. So all we're trying to do is just make sure that everything is in line. So thank you very much, and thank you for your time. And we look forward to hearing the response.
Do we not hear the decision at the end? Do we not come back in to hear the decision?
5 working days. You get it within 5 working days.
Thank
All
you.
right,
I wasn't familiar with lockdown
All right.
proceedings.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Okay.